This is one of the best examples, to reconstruct the stages in the way in which this ash mound was built over a period of 500 years. I'm talking about this 500 years only now. 15 years ago, we could not have said the life history of this mound is 500 years, because there are couple of hundred ash mounds across this landscape. Some have a very short lifespan of 50 years, some have 100 years, some have 150 years or so. The AMS radiocarbon dating, and even we are now trying OSL, optically simulated luminescence dating, they are trying to help us fix the episodes in the way cattle dung was accumulated. It was accumulated during a particular part of the year associated with a ritual activity, and it was set on fire at very high temperatures, up to about 1200 degrees or so. That led to the vitrification of the cattle dung, because silica was mixing into it. Such high, that fusion of silica in the cattle dung gave rise to that structure. So initially, they laid a gravel platform in this particular site. It may be the case at many other sites as well. They were not simply dumped on an uneven ground surface. They used to level the surface. If the surface is not hard, they would create a platform, and this we see here at Kudithani. And on top of that, we see there is a stratification within that. In terms of highly burnt vitrified ash, then you have relatively less burnt and soft ash, and then you have a soil layer sometimes, and then again a vitrified horizon. So this kind of cyclicity is seen, and it also represents the episodic activity. So that is how, and the fact that each of these layers or stratum that we see has these material cultural remains like stone axes, you have potsherds, and then animal bones, especially cattle and so on. Another interesting thing we've observed was archaeological analysis of the material. All varieties, sheep, goat, and then buffalo and cattle bones were there. I said this is a ritual animal. And further, it is further supported by the fact that none of the cattle bones that were recovered from these ash mounds do not show calcination. They are not calcined. They have not experienced burning, and there are no cut marks. Normally bones are cleaved, extract marrow, whereas we see these deliberate cut marks on sheep goat bones, but not on cattle bones. So it was not consumed by the people who domesticated cattle here. So these are all episodic, and this happens to be the largest one. From base to top, it is about 45 meters, and the perimeter is 1.5 kilometers. And we have been able to protect this from further destruction because the highway expansion was taking place. So we approached the local authorities. We requested the contractors, civil contractors, to realign the highway. Now it is a loop there. We have spent nearly 1.5 crores to develop this. And very soon we are getting large bulls to the height of 15 feet or so installed there. That process is going on. It's not true, because archaeologically it is very well established. The developments in Anatolia is much later than what happened in Southwest Asia, in the Tigris-Euphrates Valley, especially that region east of the Mediterranean, south of the Zagros Mountains and so on. The transition from hunting gathering to early agriculture took place in the foothills of this. This is an area where we have wild wheat and barley and so on. And that is an area also goat. Goat is not of Indian origin. It was introduced into India. So the developments, which the center place theory is still valid, although many people criticized when it was proposed by Gordon Childe, but early beginnings took place in that Fertile Crescent area. So expansion towards Europe, Anatolia is included in Europe, is much later in time, because the developments have been very well dated in all these regions by radiocarbon dating. We have AMS radiocarbon dating. They clearly tell us that antecedents were in this particular Iran, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, Israel. There are so many sites, which have given us very clear evidence of these transitions. What we have, pre-pottery Neolithic. It is called aceramic Neolithic in the beginning. Then we have proper pottery Neolithic and so on. But otherwise, Anatolia is a later development. Like even in India, the eastward movement of these agricultural communities from Iranian plateau took place towards the Balochistan. That interaction also gave rise to development of Neolithic way of life as reflected in this site called Mehergarh. We have a lot of input coming from. Barley happens to be native to Balochistan region. Goat was introduced. Cattle is native to this area. And then we have very clear evidence in this region. That is the hotspot. Iran, Iraq and those areas. Anatolian situation is not, according to me, is not valid. And there are a series of new publications. Çatalhöyük is a later site, as I understand. They were easily available in the landscape itself, in the immediate landscape. They didn't have to bring them from distance. They were deliberately placed on the ground in a circular fashion. So that marks the area of a house, individual house. And then you have the mud floor, and then you have this thing, post holes all around these circular boulders. And then you have a superstructure. I always tell whenever I talk about this site, I said, this is such a huge site, and what has so far been done since its discovery in 1860s was this site was discovered. 1870s, it was the time when Foote came and confirmed that this is a Neolithic site. Since then, periodic investigations have been going on with new methodologies and new problems to address in terms of reconstructing the cultural aspects of these early settlers here. I have a feeling that we have not understood more than 10% of what we have been able to recover from the site. And given the situation that the landscapes are getting modified at such a rapid scale, we are bound to lose many. And I always been pleading that it's not the problem of individual archaeologists, it is the problem of the country. It's the problem of the Government of India, Archaeological Survey of India. I've been repeatedly requesting them, please develop a cultural resource management policy for India, which is non-existent. So whenever people like us want to do some such fast-track salvage archaeology, there are problems of getting license from the Archaeological Survey of India. And when we have some new method, helping us to retrieve information which we could not do otherwise, if we apply for permission, there are restrictions and so on. That is why it's a very difficult situation. But anyway, we had to be happy with whatever we are doing. And this actually prompted me to set up that museum and to make people aware. You see, if the government cannot do anything, people who live in the region where these archaeological sites of India are located, that will benefit us to a great extent. We had an exciting time when we were doing this outreach archaeology in Kurnool region at an area called Jwalapuram area. We used to go to schools, every house we used to visit with pamphlets about the archaeological wealth, which they are not aware. And the children we demonstrate how these type of stone tools were made and demonstrate and then take them to our trench areas and so on. Within a week's time, we saw children running with pieces of antiquities. Sir, we found this there, we found this there, and so on. So we used to go, and they were really good spots where we could, really map in archaeological activity there. So it is a situation which is beyond individual country. No, in fact, at Sanganakallu itself, we have freshwater fish bones, indicating that there is a nearby river is about 10 kilometers away from the site. You have the river called Vedavati or Hagari and so on. So that fish, was part of their diet. It was procured from those areas. And then, as I said, there were a large number of these ponds and pools at that point of time. Hunter-gatherers were already familiar with aquatic food resources. So through freshwater, these are all inland sites. So freshwater fish, aquatic resources were available. And there is evidence. In fact, there is evidence for sheepfish remains in inland sites in northern part of, Deccan. There is a continuing evidence, yeah. Because the hunter-gatherers were basically fishermen. So they adapted to coastal areas and also inland water, areas.